So what is a split sheet? It's an agreement that assigns an ownership percentage to each person who worked on a song. So for songwriters, publishers, and producers, it clarifies what each person's specific contribution to the song was, whether it was the lyrics, the hook, a melody, the beat, or something else entirely. Now, a split sheet, as I mentioned before, is essential in preventing split disputes and mismatched claims, which can prevent you from registering your songs with your administrator or publisher until it's resolved. Or if you and your collaborators don't agree on splits and are entering conflicting claims with a PRO or another collection source, then no royalties are going to be paid out to any party until those conflicts are resolved.
Mm-hmm. But what if you can't get, like, you don't even, well, you may not know how to contact someone else who's claiming the song, or you don't what is it you need? Like, how can a counterclaim be resolved, for example, if there are disputes about the shares?
Great question. And let me first preface with the information provided during today's workshop is not intended to constitute legal advice. Instead, all information, content, and materials are for general informational purposes only. Now, I am, however, speaking from my experience working on counterclaim matters directly in my capacity as a client services associate, YouTube rights manager, and copyright coordinator. So with that said, a writer's kind of first course of action is to register their claim of the work as quickly as possible to prevent any erroneous payments that are going to someone who maybe had claimed incorrectly first. So a good example would be, your collaborator claimed first and they claimed 100%. And maybe they got paid out. Maybe the pay source when it has already started making payments. What you want to do is you want to go ahead and get your claim in as quickly as possible. And what that would do is that will cause the works to go into what we call conflict. Once the work goes into conflict, nobody's being paid. And the pay source is not going to pay any parties until that conflict has been resolved. So you'll need some type of supporting evidence. A split sheet is a great way to support a claim in your favor, but you can also have a text message thread that you're having with your collaborators where you're talking about the splits that you all have agreed on. You could have an email thread that you probably can all see from my background, maybe not, but I'm surrounded around a lot of papers as I'm going through some correspondence, and some of those are dealing with correspondence about splits in a work.
So yeah, it's not like they're not going to just, like, let's say that you want to claim part of a Jason Mraz work, right? They're not going to stop. They're not going to allow. They're not going to put the work in the conflict. So the bigger or more well known the artist is, am I right that it's going to be less likely that the copyright societies and all the pay sources will say we're not paying anyone until this is resolved? It will be very much depending on how big a song it is, how perhaps it is a little bit biased, I think, sometimes. No?
In my experience, it hasn't been biased. Once a work goes into conflict, no party gets paid.
But it's getting it into conflict. That's the
into conflict.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Okay, so how do you determine the song split?
That's a great question. The short answer is it depends. But let's dig a little deeper with that, right? So I always ask creators a few questions, right? The first one is the song 100% original? Does the song use a sample, or is the song using like somebody's an interpolation of a song, right? So let's start with the first question. Is the song 100% original? The first thing I would do, especially since we're talking about split sheets, is I would indicate that on the split sheet. You can simply say no sample was used or no interpolation was used. And then the splits at that point are totally negotiable amongst you and your collaborators, right? Now, how those splits are divvied up depends on a number of factors. Because according to the US government, and I know that we have a lot of people from all around the world at this conference, according to the US government, a song's ownership is determined by whoever wrote its lyrics and melody. Now, we all know that like music is much different now, right? So It can also depend on like the genre can play a huge factor. So for example, like EDM, hip hop, Afro beats, pop music, producers are key players in the creative process, and oftentimes they're going to receive publishing royalties for their contribution into the work. So a negotiation tactic that I say is when determining a deal with the producer before working on the song, once again, ask yourself a couple of questions. Is your song already finished and you're simply just asking the producer to do some engineering to it, some cleaning up? If that's the case, they probably aren't going to get a split in the publishing. But if you go to a producer with a rough outline and you both work on the song creatively, then the producer is typically going to get a songwriter credit and some split in the publishing. Another question I always ask folks is, you know, is a high profile artist going to be covering the song? Because traditionally an artist is going to ask for some type of cut in the publishing, whether they've been a part of the creative process or not. So that's just, and those are just some questions that you want to ask yourself. Now let's keep going through with that, right? So was there a sample used or was there an interpolation used? Now, most folks know what a sample is, but many aren't clear as to what an interpolation is. So allow me to try to define that. So a sample is a snippet of an original song that's been copied and pasted into a new work. And an interpolation is a recording recreated note for note and reflects the underlying composition's melody or a portion of the melody, and oftentimes it modifies the lyrics. So let me try to make that a little simpler. An interpolation is replaying a piece of music to sound exactly like the old song, and that's going to require clearance from on the publishing side. So if you include an interpolation of someone else's song, those splits have to be negotiated between you, the new writer, and the old writer of the old song that's being interpolated and their publisher. They can also deny you the right to interpolate the song if they choose. And these splits can greatly vary depending on the size of the song, depending on the use of the interpolation, how much you're using it throughout the work. So you want to reach out to the writer and publisher sooner rather than later to negotiate those splits.
You know how they would find the information? What's a place that they could go to find out the information as to whom they need to go to clear it?
Sure. I mean, I always go to check the PRO sites, right? So if you know where the song gets registered, like BMI, ASCAP would be like some of the first places I would look in the US. And that information is usually detailed out who the publisher is, what their contact telephone number is, and what their email address is.
Yeah, and even if, actually, I think even if the songs are international, if they're you know, if they've been registered, so let's say it's a French song, you know, it's likely it's being collected in America, for example. So someone can also look at BMI ASCAP to get the information of the publisher, and it's for everyone. You don't need to be a member of ASCAP or BMI to look into the database to look for the information, but you have to. It's not enough to say I tried to find the information, but I didn't find it. That won't wash, will it?
That will not wash, exactly.
No. Okay.
I did want to share some of my my favorite interpolations from 2020 and 2021. Once again, part of it is because of just for the sake of, you know, clarity, but the other thing is a lot of times you want to make this as relative as possible, right? Some people need something to like relate to. So Little Uzi Vert's song That Way, released in 2020, interpolates Backstreet Boys' I Want It That Way, one of my favorite songs from pre-teen days. Lil Nas X's songs Panini interpolates Nirvana's song In Bloom. Doja Cat and SZA had a huge hit, Kiss Me More, that interpolates Olivia Newton-John's song Physical. Olivia Rodrigo's song Good For You interpolates Paramore's song Misery Business. Olivia had another song, her first single, Deja Vu, interpolates Taylor Swift's song Cruel Summer. And I mean, in these things, Paramore's songwriters, I mean, I think they netted something like $1.2 million in publishing royalties just from Good For You, just from that interpolation. And Deja Vu, I think Taylor Swift took home to date like something like $325,000. So like there's definitely money out there. Now, did you include a sample? If you did include a sample of someone else's song, those splits, much like an interpolation, have to be negotiated with the original creator of the work. And just like with the interpolation, that right too can be denied to you. Like they don't have to allow you to sample the work. And those splits, once again, can greatly vary depending on the song and depending on the use of the sample. Something else important to note that differs from the interpolation versus a sample is that you'll also need the permission of the master recording owner to legally release the music containing the sample, which may entail you granting a portion of the master's royalties as well as the publishing royalties, and you may also have to pay an upfront fee to use that sample. And then, much like with my list of interpolations that I enjoyed from 2020 and 2021, I got a list from this year, and Summer Walker sampled her song "Come Through." She sampled Usher's hit song "You Make Me Wanna," Drake's songs "Way Too Sexy," from Certified Lover Boy. I just love that album. He sampled Right Said Fred's "I'm Too Sexy." City Girls song "Twerkulator" sampled African Bambaata's "Planet Rock." And just to stay on beat with the split sheets, you want to make sure that, much like with if a song was completely original and how you indicated on the split sheet that no sample was used, no interpolation was used, if you did use a sample or interpolation, you want to include that on the split sheet, and you also want to include what those splits are that were negotiated with the original writers and publishers of the song that's being interpolated or sampled.
Thank you. Well, you made light work of something that can be quite confusing, but already in my head it's clearer when you just use the song examples and do it that way. So thank you. So on this next slide, you can see an example of a split sheet template, which you can't say very fast. And you can download it for free from the Songtrust website. And it gives you an example of how a split sheet should be filled out, as well as, you can see it. So you see that you have the names of the writers, that's obviously essential, and the splits. And splits, I don't want to say the obvious, but they always do need to add up to 100%. You can't go over 100%. So for example, if someone wrote 100% of the lyrics and someone else wrote 100% of the music, that would be 200. So you'd have to prorata. I'm not going to get into mathematics, but you know what I mean. It needs to be a percentage of 100. And split sheets are necessary for every single song you write and should be completed immediately after a song is written, before any income or royalties start to flow in. I mean, in fact, split sheets can actually be agreed before the song is even recorded, if that's what you want. Many people perhaps write with the same people all the time. Perhaps you're a band of 4 people and you always split things in a certain way. So you can do it before, but you should do it for every song. Some people argue actually that filling out the split sheets and working out the percentages before the recording session has even happened, or the writing session, is a good idea. You can't really say that if someone writes more, well, you can say, but if someone writes more of a song and someone writes less of a song, who's to say the person who wrote the 1% of the la 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 is not going to be what makes it a hit or not? So it's always going to, Pierre and I, we can't tell you how to split your songs. I think that perhaps everyone wanted a magic wand to say, right, you should split songs like this. There is no rule, but there's common practice amongst certain genres of music. I think there are some territories I've learned also have law about, for example, that a producer should get 50%, but we'll talk about that a bit later. But the split sheet should include obviously the name of the song, the legal name of the contributing writers involved, their role in the song creation, if they were songwriter or producer, for example, the share of the songwriter percentage of the song, and or the share of the producer percentage of the song, The Performing Rights Organization affiliation, Pierre said PRO before. I know many of you will know now what that means, but that stands for Performing Rights Organization. And if you're in certain countries of the world, you might be affiliated to a collective management organization, which is abbreviated to a CMO. That's also relevant. And if there is a publishing company or an administrator involved, you can also list that. Even better, add the mailing address and contact information and make sure that the signature of everyone is on it. And to avoid future disputes, creators should fill out their split sheets together, making sure that everything is clearly stated, dated, signed, and time-stamped. If creators are having trouble coming up with a fair agreement, then sometimes you do need to get a lawyer involved. So it takes some thought, you know, and as I'm going to speak about next, you know, not necessarily just leaving it to the moment. It takes some preparation. So how do you actually get them signed? I mean, in theory, I expect that everything we've explained and advised you so far has encouraged you to use a split sheet when co-writing. And as I said at the beginning, everyone says, use a split sheet, use a split sheet. So everyone knows to use one, but for a lot of people, it's excruciatingly difficult to get their split sheet signed. When Pierre and I were talking about this, we likened it to how comfortable do you feel when you're at a restaurant? Let's say Pierre and I are on a date and it's our first date and we're wondering, we've just had a lovely meal and now we're thinking who's going to pay and what's the right etiquette? Should we split it? Will it insult Pierre if I ask him, can I pay? Or, you know, it's a very awkward, for some people, this sort of interaction can be difficult. And with the best of intentions going into the studio, all too often, people do walk out of the studio without their split sheet signed. You can't do that in the restaurant, of course. So we have some tips to help you. And, you know, from my point of view, as someone who does find these subjects quite awkward, believe it or not, the idea is to prepare to avoid any awkwardness at the studio session itself. So I expect that before two parties work together, let's say an artist and a producer, there is an email or a phone call between those parties requesting a collaboration. So someone is saying, hey, I'd like to work with so-and-so. And that could be an ideal time to refer the requester to your representative. Now, the representative can be anyone. It just needs to be someone who you can trust and who is reliable. So it could be a family member, a colleague, a friend, your manager, your label. It doesn't matter. You just need to refer the requester to that person saying that they will look at your schedule and book the studio time in, for example. And then when your representative is in touch with the requester, she or he can explain what your fees are. And we're not going to go into huge detail here, but it is pretty, you know, if you're giving up your day to go into the studio, for example, as a producer, that should not be, you either get paid for going in the studio or you get some of the publishing. If you're giving up perhaps another job that you have for that day to work, you don't know if the song that you're working on will see the light of day in any shape or form in the future. So you know, these are separate things from my point of view. Pierre, perhaps you feel the same, and you can and should be paid for your time in the studio. You know, then you can also, that's separate, that's a contract perhaps different from the split sheet. And your representative can pass on the blank split sheet template in advance when confirming that the producer or whomever will be ready for the to appear in the studio to co-write, and explain that the collaborators' details, so their name, their IPI number, and all the things I said that need to be on that split sheet template, bar perhaps the splits, it depends, need to be completed prior to the session, because it does take a bit of fumbling around, I think, for people to find their full name as they registered it at their collection society, the number that identifies them, and perhaps any other information. So it's nice if that's all done before in a nice relaxed way. And then the representative can explain at the session that the splits will be agreed upon, or perhaps again they may be agreed in advance, and that the document needs to be signed at the session. And then she or he can explain, excuse me, that the split sheet can also be used for registration purposes. So I think that's a really nice way to make it seem like demonstrate that it is beneficial to all parties to have the split sheet in hand when you finish recording, because then you have a clear documentation which I can give to my administrator, Pierre can give to his administrator or publisher, and everyone has the 100% view or copyright chain for this song. And so no one's going to, Pierre's not going to say, I don't know what Mandy's name is and what her PRO is and what her address is. And I don't really care, perhaps, I'm just going to register it 100. And before you know it, because there's often more than one person involved in the whole registration process, the shares can become a bit warped, let's say. So you can say, we'd like to have it for registration purposes. And then the final cream at the end, I think, would be that at the end of the session, perhaps your advisor can come in and hand the split sheet over to the artist to sign, so that you don't have to do it. Now, even if you are using a split sheet or intend to use one, you never know how it will go on the day. So as Pierre mentioned before, keeping a record of everything about the engagement, from perhaps being asked to write together to supplying any demo tapes or any first versions, second versions, is very beneficial. So keep what I would call a paper trail. I suppose it's a digital trail now, or a remote trail, but keep everything you can, just in case. Just because it makes good sense to do so, not because you should distrust the people you work with. Now, we're going to do something a bit, I'm just checking the time. We have a bit of time. Now, practicing using split sheets may sound a bit ridiculous, hysterical, but it's really useful to be prepared, in the same way that I went through this presentation and find myself today talking to the mirror, so to speak. So Pierre and I thought that we'd give it a go to try and demonstrate how badly wrong it can all go if unprepared. And in contrast, we hope to then show you how it could be smooth sailing if you are prepared for these things. So case study number 1, the disaster. Now, I'm not an actress or actor, and Pierre, I don't think you've taken acting lessons.
No, I'm not a thespian.
No, and my disclaimer is I am not a professional actor. In the same way as you said, this is not official legal advice. So here we go. So, right, Pierre, you are a very successful artist and a big fan of mine. I'm the producer, and you've asked to work with me. And we've just finished a fantastic session in the studio. So shall we see how it goes?
Let's try.
Okay. So, oh, Pierre, that was so good. Thank you very much for working with me today. It was a great experience.
Oh, Mandy, like the vibe was great. Like, you're awesome. It's fire. Like, I can't wait to do this with you again. I definitely think the track is going to like go number 1. Like, let's definitely like find some time to like collaborate again. I'm definitely feeling the vibe.
Thank you. And your label was saying that they have great plans for this and they want to try to get it released quite soon. So we should make sure that we, get the tapes in or whatever, over to you soon. So great. Well, I have this piece of paper though that I need you to sign. I need to know, let me think, what is it I need to know? Well, it's about like how much of the publishing I'll get and how much you'll get and stuff, Can you just sign this for me, please?
Bro, you just killed the vibe. Like, you killed the mood. I don't like talking business in the studio. Like, yeah, you can talk to my manager or something like that, but I don't really like.
No, but I'm sorry, I really didn't mean to offend you or anything, but I've been told that I really must get this thing signed. I'm not quite sure what it is or why I need it, but I know that they said to get it signed before I leave the studio. And, I think it's about how much of the publishing you get and how much of the publishing I get. So what do you think? I was thinking that there's just 2 of us, it should be 50-50.
I mean, like I said, like you killed the mood. Like just, you can hit me on my phone. You can talk to my manager, but like, I don't even know if I want to. I wanted to do another song with you, but now you're talking about publishing. You want to take my stuff, like, bro, like you killed the mood. You killed the vibe. Like, it's trash.
Oh, I don't know what to say now. Well, I'm really sorry if I offended you. I actually feel a bit, I trust you, but I don't know what I'm going to say to. Well, okay, that's fine. I'm just gonna. Yeah, it's fine. Of course, I'll send you something, and I hope that this doesn't. I'm gonna go. I'll see you later. Thanks.
All right, peace.
Oh, I almost cried then because I felt like because it really feels horrible. I didn't like that. Okay. No, but because I'm someone who's always prepared, tries to be prepared. So I'm definitely gonna go for the success story in the positive yellow color.
Let's go.
All right,
Let's go.
you big artist, Pierre. Let's see if I can do better this time. Okay, I'm going to play two parts now, so I'm being very ambitious. So I'm going to start by being let's start again the same way we did. I'm the producer and you're the artist, and you'll stay the artist, and then I will become my own business manager, I think. Oh yeah, that was great, thank you. I think we wrote something good, you know.
Yeah, no, that was a hit. Like, it was fire. Like, I can't wait until, like, I can already see like this going viral on TikTok. Like, my YouTube views are about to be insane. Like, oh my God. Like, yeah, we definitely gotta do this again.
When you did that la 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 thing, and then it suddenly came together, I was like, oh, it was so cool. So I'd like you to meet my manager, Pierre. This is Amanda, my manager. And can she I believe that your manager may have had a word with you about some stuff they need to sort out together. Do you mind if I let Amanda just speak to you for a second, please? And I'll see you next time we work together. I'll send you over the music as soon as I can, okay?
Sure. Yeah. Like, my manager's already talked to your manager, so I already knew that, like,
oh, that's good.
we're gonna kind of,
Okay,
like,
well,
wrap everything up. So no worries. Like, I
okay.
got some time. Let's make it happen.
Oh, thank you. Okay, I'm someone else now. Ta-da! Hey, Pierre, I was listening a bit. I'm Amanda. Nice to meet you, and what a great session. I was listening from the booth, and I think that you got the best out of Mandy today, and I think it's going to be a great hit.
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, we don't even have to do the small talk. I
Yeah,
know you were talking about the you needed me to
yeah,
go
thank you.
through splits.
Yeah, your manager Gerard, he said that a 50-50 split is fine for this, and so I already completed it. Luckily, Gerard and we got all the information up front of today, so you can obviously, please do have a read, but as you can see, it's got both of your names, Mandy's name and your name, and all of your details. And just so you know, this will be used to register the song at the collection societies to make sure that we collect your global royalties as quickly and swiftly and efficiently without any issues along the way. The song title, what is it called? We should add that.
Yeah, I think it was You Make Me Wanna, but give me a second. Let me hit my manager just to confirm.
Yeah.
The numbers, you said 50-50?
Yeah.
All right. I'm just gonna hit them on text real quick.
Thank you.
All right, I'm just waiting for him to get back to me. All right, we solid. We said 50-50.
Great.
So
that's brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've put 50-50 on the form. Here it is, the split sheet. I made 2 copies, so we have a copy each, and we'll all sign them. Hang on a minute, I'll get Mandy to sign as well. Mandy, coming. Okay, you need to sign this. Okay. So, oh no, don't. Sorry. Oh my goodness. So, okay, I'm signing it. Don't laugh. Okay, there, I've signed it. Can you sign, please? Okay,
Sure.
all signed. Okay, Pierre, it's been lovely to work with you today, and I look forward to us working together. All right.
Yes.
So if the audience is there, I'm sure that our own colleagues are cracking up at my acting, but at least I have a nice voice with my cold. So now, it was so much better because I actually laughed in the second one, and the first one truly, and I'm not exaggerating, I could have cried because it was so horrible, that situation, and I empathized with that poor person who wasn't prepared. And this is not an exaggeration. I do think that these situations will happen. And also, if many producers get their break, don't they? And then to think that they've upset the artist must be horrible. So yeah, so from my perspective, the first example, the mood declined, it was awkward, there was distrust, and actually I, as the producer in this case, or that case, was left with a feeling that this person is never going to want to work with me again, and I think I would have left the room and cried. So whereas the second one, I found it worked much better. There was this sort of good cop, bad cop way, but it was so good because I didn't need to explain what the document was about to you as the artist. And I feel that it would, we show that it would prove a practical usage, and that we retain the relationship. And you, as observer as well, what do you think?
Me.
Yeah. Did you have any other thoughts about
The first one or the second
situations?
one the first one, even doing it, I felt terrible. But
Well, you're a nice person, you wouldn't.
Yeah, but I know so many friends in this business who have gone through similar situations, and bargaining power plays such a huge role, especially when the person is a big artist or it's a big producer, and you really want to work with them again, and kind of having that conversation about where the money goes, how it's divvied up. Sometimes it's uncomfortable, and sometimes people can just kind of use their star power to intimidate you. And so I think it's really, really important to have someone in place to play kind of like that buffer, to kind of keep the relationship as good and as positive as possible. So yeah, the first one was definitely, I felt your awkwardness through the screen.
Yeah,
Yeah.
People who are less, if you're working with a big artist and perhaps they're with a major publisher or a major record label or both, of course, it's not always that they mean to be mean. It's that they're even further removed from the process. They don't really know what's going on. Whereas people who have maintained their independence are so much more involved with the whole, the work that there is to be done afterwards. So in our world, it's registering the songs and making the claims. But people working with larger organizations perhaps will find that they, that the voice that they have, going from them to the person or people who will end up registering their songs. It's like Chinese whispers, and it becomes something, it's no longer what it became,
Yeah.
So,
really good point. Really good point.
Yeah, I think so. So, I hope that it's been helpful. I can already go through some of the. I see someone here wrote a lot of these new artists don't have management. That's for sure, and that's why I said that as a representative, it doesn't have to be a manager. I mean, I would ask my brother, for example, or my sister, or my cousin, or someone who lives down the road from me, anyone who you can trust to fill that role. Hopefully there's someone who can fill the role as an advisor. What if a song had two songwriters? However, if one of the songwriters doesn't have a Songtrust account and is not registered with any PRO because he or she doesn't intend to be a long-term songwriter, for example, they're doing it as a hobby, what's your suggestion to keep her getting his fair share if we get any royalties from the song? Well, that's easy, I think. I believe with Songtrust, you always have to register 100% of the song. And you, as a Songtrust client, would be a Songtrust writer, and any co-writers with whom you write are outside writers. And whatever information you do know about them, ideally you know more than their name, and if you've used the split sheet you'll know perhaps their PRO, but let's just say they are someone who's not taking songwriting seriously at this stage. You would still need to register them as co-writer, and in doing so, when we register the song on your behalf, we will register so that song will have a perfect picture of who wrote 100% of the song, but we'll only collect for the person who is registered with us for their share. So I hope that's answered it. Is that how you read the question to be clear as well?
So there's one part of the question that I definitely want to address, and it's they don't have a Songtrust account and they're not registered with a PRO, right? So if they want to make sure they're collecting their share, the only way to do that is affiliating with a performance rights society, or a collection management organization, if you're outside of the US. So the best advice I could give them is make sure that you affiliate with PRO or CMO to make sure you're collecting your share.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be one in your own country. Perhaps there's a lot of people here, as this whole summit is for clients, and for example, a lot of the clients that I work with are from places where they don't yet have a very fully functional PRO or CMO. So there are opportunities within Songtrust to become affiliated to other collection societies directly. So we won't go into that because I see a lot of questions, but it should not be an obstacle. The second question from Julia, if a producer works with an artist on a song, top to bottom, and does the audio engineering, should he get more shares than the artist? Okay, my answer is do not compare apples and pears. Audio engineering, I don't know, is that's not the composition? Don't know, this is complicated. Pierre, what do you think?
Well, that one, you know, and I want to be really clear. There's a difference between, you know, your publisher share and the master share. And so it sounds like what Julian is speaking about specifically is on the master side, and this workshop is speaking specifically about the songwriting process and collecting on the publisher side. But I think it's a good segue. I did see another question where someone was making mention about the composition. Let me actually see if I can find it. Any advice for split sheets where the parties need to specify between composition and sound recording? For example, one songwriter for composition, but producer wants points on the finished sound recording. Really good question. I would have two different split sheets. One specifically as it relates to the publishing and songwriting, and then another one that lays out the points and master royalties on the sound recording. I definitely wouldn't convolute the two split sheets. I would probably have two different split sheets, one for master recording and one for publishing.
Thank you. Tabitha Polaris, she's asked, I presume it's a she, sorry if not. I paid a producer to help finish one of my songs and paid an extra producer fee for the studio session. Is it a fee or publishing split or both? Wondering what is fair. So this is something we touched on before. You know, paying a producer fee is something totally separate from a publishing split. And just to be clear, the publishing royalties will be what we say is at the back end. So the song is registered and then the song is exploited. It's in the world. It could be streamed or used in an ad or whatever will happen to this. It could be performed live. And there's all sorts of publishing royalties, which this whole summit probably will explain, I should imagine, about how one can make money on the publishing side, royalties from your song. And that is what will happen. So there's this whole life of the song after this particular one instance, which was going in the studio and recording it. It's about the relationship. It's about what's customary. There is no rule, but I would say fair is to pay someone for working with you if it's their studio. Maybe if you're in a band together, that's a different thing. And then, you know, attributing some of the publishing. Pierre, if I say anything that you disagree with, just jump in, yeah?
Totally, but no, I think that you hit it right on the head. That I mean, you're paying for two different. The okay. Splits in a work is ownership, right? And so that's, you know, paying royalties on the song that's being collected on the back end, as long as you own a percentage of the work. What you're talking about, that upfront fee, is something totally different, totally separate. And I think, Mandy, you did a phenomenal job on touching on that. Like, you know, you want to pay people for their time. If you have somebody coming in and doing some work, then you definitely want to pay them that fee. That's a, you know, personal thing, customary, but yeah, it's two separate things.
Yeah, we have time for one or two more questions.
Okay.
Jessica has a lot of questions. Let's see. How do you view a producer's right to songwriting credit if you bring a song that's already written when you come to them, but they offer thoughts that lead to refining lyrics and song form? Should that result in the producer being considered a co-writer who gets a split? And how best to navigate that in real time to stay on the same page about whether the producer's role is going to be a co-writer versus not? I think that what you're asking is, it's the whole sphere, isn't it, of how you're going to tackle this whole situation of song splits. And a lot of it is about the norms within the circles that you're working, because from my point, I think that it's very much, you know, one is a songwriter, one is a producer, and it may just be that they do this, they do that, and it may seem like it's less, but it's still, when you create something as a whole, it's the whole that is, I don't know, I'm getting a bit airy fairy, but I think that, yeah, I think you have to make it very clear right from the start, this is what you expect if you're going to work with them, before they do what did you ask. You feel that you should have 75% because you're presenting to someone a song, that you only want them to make better, and you're only going to give them 25%. See if they agree and see who will work with you. I don't know. This is the problem, isn't it, Pierre? Do you have a more concrete
Yeah,
answer?
I mean, I don't have a more complete answer, but I think that you hit the nail on the head that, this is something that should be negotiated between you and your publisher. A lot easier said than done. There's no magic wand that tells you exactly, what splits they should get. However, if you think that they are making a considerable contribution to the actual lyrics and melody of the work, in my opinion, they should be getting some type of percentage in the publishing. Once again, that's a conversation that should be had between you and the publisher. The role that they play as an engineer, producer, and songwriter, greatly varies, and all of that can be discussed and negotiated.
Okay, so I think the last question, I'll tackle this one from McCrae. What if you are assisting in the writing or production of the song and the song is going through your publishing company? I don't understand that question actually, because it doesn't, I don't think that I can't answer that because I don't think it's a clear question. Sorry, McCrae. Do you understand it, Pierre? Because it's like, if it goes to your publishing company, that's not relevant to if you're assisting or writing in the production of the song. You just have a song, and then the life of the song either goes through the publishing company or it doesn't. You might register it yourself, for example, at a PRO. So I'm sorry, McCrae, perhaps you can find a way to ask the question more so I can give you a proper answer. Did you understand it better, Pierre?
I think what they may be trying to talk about in a very kind of like high level way is probably like co-publishing, and maybe the publishing company, owns any rights in any prior and future songs that they write. Maybe that's what they're kind of alluding to, but
the song will still be written, whatever the publishing, it's still 100%. I want to thank everybody who stayed to the end and who bared with us on our wonderful acting, and I hope it was interesting, Pierre. It's been really brilliant to work with you on this and to have your expertise on the legal side, and to so clearly explain sampling and interpolation. So we all have some professional information.